Mason Caldwell liked his quiet life. After years of flying military planes in wars he wanted to forget, his small cabin in the Montana woods gave him peace. He fixed old planes at a small airfield 20 miles away, and the rest of his time was his own. The night sky was clear and full of stars, as Mason sat on his porch with a cup of coffee. The meteor shower had been on the news, and from his mountain home with no city lights, the view was perfect. He watched the streaks of light cross, the sky sipping his drink and feeling the cool night air. Then he saw something odd. One light moved against the pattern of the others. It grew bigger, not smaller like the meteors. Mason stood up, coffee forgotten, as he watched the strange light. It wasn't a plane. It moved too fast and had no blinking lights. It wasn't a satellite either. "What the hell is that?" he whispered to the empty forest. The light suddenly flared bright. So bright Mason had to cover his eyes. Then came a sound like thunder and the ground shook under his feet. The coffee cup fell and broke on the porch boards. Mason didn't think. He grabbed his jacket, flashlight, and the handgun he kept for protection against wild animals. Whatever had crashed was close, maybe a mile into the dense forest behind his property. If it was a small plane, someone might need help. He moved quickly through the trees, following the faint glow that lit up the forest ahead. The smell of burning wood and something else. Something that reminded him of hot metal and strange chemicals filled the air. After 20 minutes of walking, he reached a small clearing that hadn't been there before. Trees were broken and burned in a circle. In the center sat something that made Mason freeze. It wasn't a plane. It wasn't anything made by human hands. The craft was about the size of a small bus, but shaped like nothing Mason had ever seen. It curved and flowed like liquid metal frozen in time. The surface shimmered with colors that shifted like oil on water, even in places not touched by the moonlight. No seams showed on the smooth hull, though one side was badly damaged, revealing strange glowing parts inside. Mason approached slowly, gun ready but pointed down. A military life had taught him caution, but his curiosity pulled him forward. As he got closer, a section of the hull suddenly changed. What looked like solid metal flowed like water, creating an opening where none had been before. "Hello?" Mason called. "Anyone in there?" No answer came, but the opening seemed like an invitation. Taking a deep breath, Mason stepped inside the craft. The inside was as strange as the outside. Soft light came from the walls themselves. No buttons, no screens, just smooth surfaces that glowed gently. The space was small but felt bigger than it should have been. That's when he saw her. She lay on what looked like a control chair, though it had no visible controls. At first glance, she looked like a woman. 2 arms, 2 legs, a face that was almost human. But as Mason moved closer, the differences became clear. Her skin was a pale lavender color. Her features were sharper, more defined than any human face. And her hair, Mason had never seen anything like it. It flowed around her head like water, changing colors slowly, deep purple, then blue, then silver, like an aurora in the night sky. She wasn't moving. A dark liquid that might have been blood trickled from a cut on her forehead, but the color was wrong, too silver, too shiny. "Hey, are you okay?" Mason asked, knowing it was a stupid question. She clearly wasn't okay, and she probably couldn't understand him anyway. To his surprise, her eyes fluttered open. They were large, with no whites, just silver irises that seemed to glow from within. She looked at Mason and said something in a language like nothing he had ever heard. It didn't sound like words so much as music, and somehow he felt the yow, meaning in his mind rather than hearing it with his ears. She tried to sit up but fell back with a sound of pain. Her strange eyes locked onto Mason's and he felt something, a connection, a pull he couldn't explain. She reached for his hand, and without thinking, he let her take it. Her skin was warm, warmer than a human's should be. She pressed something into his palm and closed his fingers around it. A small crystal, clear but with lights moving inside it like tiny stars. As soon as it touched his skin, it began to pulse with a soft blue light. The woman's eyes widened when she saw this. She said something else urgent this time, then her eyes rolled back and she fell unconscious again. Mason checked for a pulse and found one. Fast but strong. She was alive but hurt. He couldn't leave her here, but he also couldn't call for help. What would he say? That he found an alien woman in a crashed spaceship? Making a quick decision, Mason carefully lifted her from the chair. She was lighter than he expected, like she was made of hollow bones. Her strange hair flowed around, his arms tickling his skin with a feeling like static electricity. Outside the craft, Mason looked back once. Already the metal seemed to be flowing, closing the opening he had used. By morning, would it even be visible? Or would it hide itself somehow? He didn't know, but right now, his focus was on the unconscious woman in his arms. The walk back to his cabin took twice as long, carrying her carefully over fallen logs and through dense brush. The whole time, the crystal in his pocket pulsed with light, growing warmer against his leg. Mason didn't know what he had found, or what finding her would mean for him or for the world. All he knew was that she needed help, and he was the only one who could give it. What he didn't see were the dark shapes that moved through the night sky above the forest. 3 ships, smaller than the crashed one but similar in design, their surfaces absorbing light rather than reflecting it. They circled the crash site, sensors seeking the signal from the royal beacon now in Mason's pocket. The hunt had begun. 3 days passed. Mason kept the strange woman in his spare bedroom. He cleaned her wounds as best he could. The silver blood had dried quickly, turning into something like thin metal flakes. Her breathing was steady, and sometimes her eyes would open, but she didn't seem to really see him. Mason checked on the crash site once. It was gone. Not just the ship. The entire clearing had vanished. Trees stood where broken ones had been. The ground showed no signs of the impact. If not for the woman in his cabin and the crystal in his pocket, Mason might have thought he dreamed the whole thing. The crystal never stopped glowing. Mason kept it on the bedside table next to the sleeping woman. Sometimes it pulsed brighter when he touched it, like it recognized him somehow. On the morning of the 4th day, Mason was making coffee when he heard movement. He turned to find the alien woman standing in the doorway of the spare room. She wore the same strange suit she had crashed in, though Mason had removed the damaged outer pieces. It looked like liquid metal woven into fabric. "You helped me," she said in perfect English. Mason dropped his coffee mug. It shattered on the floor. "You speak English," he said, not moving. "I speak your language now." She touched her temple. "When you carried me, our minds connected. I learned your words." Mason stared at her. In the daylight, she looked even less human. Her lavender skin had faint patterns on it like circuits just under the surface. Her eyes were completely silver with no pupils that he could see, and her hair still moved slightly even when she was still, colors shifting through it like northern lights. "Who are you?" Mason finally asked. "My name is Lyria. I am first daughter of House Vaxar." She said this like it should mean something to him. When he didn't react, she added, "I am of the Elysian people." "You're an alien." Lyria tilted her head. "To me, you are the alien, Mason Caldwell." "How do you know my name?" "From your mind." Our connection was brief but effective. She moved into the room, her movements graceful but slightly odd, as if she was used to different gravity. "I am sorry for the intrusion. It was necessary for my survival." Mason had 1,000 questions. He started with the most immediate. "Are you feeling better? You were hurt." "My body heals quickly. The crash damaged me, but not severely." She looked around the small cabin. "This is your dwelling?" "Yes. My home. It is rustic." The word seemed to amuse her. "My people live in cities of crystal and light." Mason didn't know what to say to that. Instead, he pointed to the crystal on the table. "What is this thing you gave me?" Lyria's expression changed. She moved quickly to the table and picked up the crystal. It glowed brighter in her hand. This is a royal beacon. It should not have activated for you. She looked at him with new intensity. Only Elysian royal blood can activate this. It is how my people would find me if I were lost. I didn't do anything to it. It just started glowing when you gave it to me. You did something, Mason Caldwell. Something impossible. She studied him. Show me your hand. Confused, Mason held out his right hand, the one that had first touched the crystal. Lyria took it in her own. Her touch was warm, almost hot. She turned his palm up and traced the lines with a finger. Where she touched, his skin tingled. There is a connection forming. She sounded surprised. The old stories speak of this, but it has not happened in generations. What stories? What connection? Before Lyria could answer, the lights in the cabin flickered. Both of them looked up. They are here, Lyria whispered. Who's here? The ones who shot down my ship. The Draken. She moved to the window and looked out. They hunt me. Mason joined her at the window. At first he saw nothing in the morning light. Then movement caught his eye. Something large moved through the trees. It wasn't a person, and it wasn't an animal. Its shape shifted as it moved, like it was changing form. What do they want? Mason asked, keeping his voice low. My death. Lyria's voice was flat. I was on a diplomatic mission to the Novan system when they attacked. They should not have found me, but they did. Yes. She held up the crystal. Because of this. When it activated for you, it sent out a signal. Mason felt a chill. I led them here? Not intentionally. Lyria placed a hand on his arm. But yes, they followed the beacon's signal. Outside, more shapes moved through the trees. Mason counted at least 5. They were closing in on the cabin. We have to leave, Mason said. I have a truck, we can... A sound like thunder cut him off. Something hit the side of the cabin and the whole building shook. Dust fell from the ceiling. Lyria looked at Mason. Do you have weapons? Mason nodded. He moved to a cabinet and unlocked it, pulling out a hunting rifle. Will this work against them? No, Lyria said, but it might slow them down. Another impact hit the cabin. A window shattered. Mason heard a sound like metal scraping against wood. They're trying to get in, he said. Lyria reached for a pouch on her suit and pulled out a small device. It looked like a thin tube of metal, no longer than her palm. She twisted it and it extended into something that looked vaguely like a gun. This will stop them, but I only have enough charge for a few shots. She looked at Mason. We need to reach my ship. Your ship is gone, Mason told her. I checked. There's nothing there anymore. Lyria smiled for the first time. It changed her whole face, made her look almost human. It hid itself as it was designed to do. But it is still there. I can find it. A section of the cabin wall suddenly bent inward, metal pushing through wood like it was paper. A long, dark tentacle of what looked like liquid metal reached through. The gap. Lyria fired her weapon. A pulse of blue light hit the tentacle and it withdrew with a sound like a scream. We go now, she said. Mason grabbed a backpack and quickly filled it with supplies, water, food, a first aid kit. He added extra ammunition for the rifle, though Lyria had said it wouldn't do much good. Force of habit from his military days. Truck is out back, he said. If we can reach it. The front door exploded inward. Something stood there that Mason's mind struggled to process. It was vaguely humanoid, but much taller, with skin that looked like black metal. It had no face, just a smooth surface where a face should be. Its arms ended in what looked like sharp blades rather than hands. Lyria fired again. The blue pulse hit the creature in the chest and it fell backward, but more shapes moved behind it. The back door, Mason said, grabbing Lyria's arm. Now, they ran through the small cabin to the rear door. Mason could hear the creatures breaking through the front. The sounds they made weren't like any animal he knew. They were like metal, grinding on metal. Outside, Mason's truck sat in the small clearing. Behind the cabin, they sprinted for it. Mason threw the backpack in and helped Lyria climb into the passenger seat. He jumped into the driver's side and started the engine. As they pulled away, Mason looked in the rearview mirror. 3 of the creatures emerged from his cabin. One raised an arm and something shot from it. A dark projectile that hit the truck's tailgate with a bang. "Drive faster," Lyria said, looking back. "They will follow." Mason pressed the gas pedal to the floor. The truck bounced over the rough forest road, engine roaring. In the mirror, he saw the creatures growing smaller, but they were still coming. And they moved much faster than anything that size should be able to move. "Where to?" Mason asked. Lyria pointed. "East, into the deeper forest. My ship is there." Mason turned the truck onto a smaller trail. He had no idea what was happening or why these creatures wanted Lyria dead. All he knew was that his simple, quiet life had just been blown apart, just like his cabin. And somehow he was now connected to this alien woman in a way he didn't understand. The crystal in Lyria's hand still pulsed with light, and Mason could feel it somehow, like it was calling to him. Behind them, the hunters followed, relentless and inhuman. The truck bounced over rough ground as Mason pushed it to its limits. Trees flashed by on either side of the narrow dirt road. Lyria held tight to the dashboard, her silver eyes scanning the forest. "They're still following," she said. "The Draken are excellent hunters." "What exactly are they?" Mason asked, swerving to avoid a fallen tree. "They didn't look alive." "They are alive, but not like you or me. The Draken are part biological, part machine. They adapt their bodies for different environments and tasks." Lyria looked back. "These are hunter class, made for tracking and killing." Mason checked the rearview mirror. Nothing visible, but he could feel they were being pursued. "And they want to kill you because—" "Politics," Lyria said with a sound that might have been a laugh. "I am next in line for the Elysian throne. My death would destabilize our empire and give the Draken Collective an advantage in our ongoing conflict." Mason tried to process this information. Alien empires, thrones, conflicts in space. It was like something from a movie, not as real life. "Your ship," he said. "How far?" Lyria held up the crystal. It pulsed faster now. "Close, but we cannot drive all the way. Soon we must continue on foot." As if on cue, the truck hit something and jerked violently. The engine made a terrible grinding sound. Mason fought the wheel, but the truck slid sideways and then stopped, smoke rising from under the hood. "End of the road," he said grimly. "We walk from here." They grabbed the backpack and left the useless truck behind. Mason led the way, using old hunting trails he knew from exploring these woods. Lyria moved with surprising grace, never stumbling even on the roughest ground. After an hour of walking, Lyria stopped suddenly. "Here," she said, pointing to what looked like an ordinary clearing. Mason saw nothing unusual. "There's nothing there." "Watch." Lyria held up the crystal and spoke words in her musical language. The air in the clearing seemed to ripple, like heat rising from hot pavement. And then, slowly, a ship appeared. It wasn't the same one that had crashed. This was smaller, sleeker, designed for speed rather than comfort. Its hull had the same flowing metallic look as the crashed vessel. "Scout ship," Lyria explained, "hidden in case of emergency." Mason stared at the ship that had been invisible moments before. "That's convenient." "My people plan for all possibilities." Lyria moved toward the ship, which opened as she approached. "Come, we must leave before—" A dark shape burst from the trees. One of the Draken hunters landed between them and the ship, its metal-like body gleaming in the sunlight. 2 more emerged from the forest on either side. Lyria raised her weapon, but the first hunter moved with blinding speed. A tentacle of liquid metal shot from its arm, knocking the weapon from her hand. Another wrapped around her waist, lifting her off the ground. Mason didn't think. He raised his rifle and fired. The bullet hit the Draken hunter in the shoulder. It didn't penetrate the strange skin, but the impact made the creature stagger. Its grip on Lyria loosened. "The crystal!" Lyria shouted. "Use the crystal!" Mason pulled the crystal from his pocket. It was hot now, pulsing rapidly with blue light. He didn't know what to do with it. so he simply held it up. The effect was immediate. Light burst from the crystal in all directions. The Draken hunters made sounds like screaming metal and covered what passed for their faces. The one holding Lyria dropped her. Into the ship. Lyria grabbed Mason's hand and pulled him toward the scout vessel. They ran up the ramp into the ship. Inside was a small cockpit with 2 seats surrounded by controls that looked more like art than technology. The ramp closed behind them, sealing. With a soft sound, Lyria placed her hands on what might have been a control panel. The ship hummed to life, lights flowing across its surfaces. "They'll follow," Mason said, looking out through a clear section of the hull. The Draken hunters were recovering, moving toward the ship. "Not where we're going." Lyria's hands moved across the controls. The ship lifted off the ground smoothly. No feeling of acceleration. The trees fell away below them. One of the hunters leaped impossibly high and grabbed the ship's underside. Metal fingers dug into the hull. "We have a passenger," Mason warned. Lyria nodded. Not for long. The ship shot upward with sudden speed. Mason was pressed back into his seat. The hunter lost its grip and fell, a dark shape tumbling back to Earth. Within seconds, they were above the clouds. The blue sky darkened to black as they left the atmosphere behind. Stars appeared, brighter than Mason had ever seen them. "We're in space," he said, stating the obvious. "Yes." Lyria turned to look at him. "I'm sorry, Mason Caldwell. I didn't intend to take you from your world." Mason looked back at the Earth, already growing smaller as the ship accelerated. His cabin was destroyed. His quiet life was over. And he was in space with an alien princess running from hunters who wanted her dead. "It's fine," he said, surprising himself with how much he meant it. "Not much waiting for me down there anyway." Lyria studied him for a moment, then nodded. "We go to a safe place. A mining station in your asteroid belt. It's operated by traders who deal with many species. We'll be able to contact my people from there." The ship moved through space at impossible speed, much faster than anything humans had built. Mason watched Earth fade to a blue dot and then vanish completely. "I need to explain something to you," Lyria said after they had been traveling for some time. "About the crystal, about why it responded to you." Mason turned his attention from the stars to her face. "I've been wondering about that. My people, the Elysians, form connections, mental bonds." She seemed to be choosing her words carefully. "Royalty like myself have stronger abilities in this regard. When I was injured and you helped me, a connection began to form between us." "What kind of connection?" Lyria's hair shifted colors, flowing from silver to deep blue. "Among my people, certain connections are significant. The crystal is designed to respond only to Elysian royal blood, or to those connected to royal blood." "Connected how?" "In our culture, we would call it a bondmate." Lyria's silver eyes met his. "Something like what humans call marriage, but deeper. A connection of minds as well as bodies." Mason stared at her. "Are you saying we're married?" "Not exactly." Lyria almost smiled. "The bond is not complete, but it has begun accidentally through our contact. The crystal recognized this potential bond, which is why it activated for you." "And that's bad?" "It is unexpected and dangerous." Lyria turned back to the controls. "There is an ancient prophecy among my people. It speaks of a time when an Elysian royal would form a bond with someone not of our kind. This bond would change both individuals and lead to a shift in power throughout known space." Mason tried to take this in. "And the Draken don't want that to happen." "No. They fear change. They fear losing their position of strength." Lyria's voice hardened. "They have hunted me since I left my homeworld, hoping to prevent the prophecy from coming true. But you don't even know if I'm the right person," Mason said. "This could all be a coincidence." Lyria held up the crystal, which still pulsed in time with Mason's heartbeat. "The crystal does not recognize coincidence, only truth." The ship's controls suddenly flashed red. Lyria turned her attention to them, her expression growing concerned. "What is it?" Mason asked. "Draken ships, 3 of them." She pointed to what looked like a display. showing 3 dark shapes moving toward their position. They were waiting in your solar system. How did they know to wait here? They've been tracking me for weeks. They must have guessed I would have. An escape vessel hidden near my diplomatic ship. Lyria's hands moved across the controls. We cannot outrun them in this scout ship. Mason looked at the approaching enemy ships. His military mind assessed the situation. Do we have any weapons? This is a diplomatic vessel. It has defensive capabilities, but nothing that would stop hunter ships. Lyria looked at him. But there is another option. One the Draken would not expect. What's that? We hide where they won't follow. She pointed to a display showing a large object. It took Mason a moment to recognize it as the moon. There is an old mining station on the far side of your moon, abandoned by my people centuries ago, but the systems may still function. The Draken avoid such places. They consider them cursed. Sounds like our best option, Mason said. Lyria nodded and changed their course. The ship accelerated toward the moon, growing larger in their view. The enemy ships adjusted to follow. They're gaining on us, Mason observed. Yes, but we have one advantage they do not. Lyria looked at him. The crystal. It can power the ship's emergency systems, give us a burst of speed they cannot match. But to do so, both of us must activate it together. How do we do that? Place. Your hand on mine. Lyria held the crystal between her palms. Mason hesitated only a moment before covering her hands with his own. The connection was immediate and shocking. Mason felt energy flow between them, through the crystal and into the ship. His mind touched Lyria's, and suddenly he could see images, a beautiful world with 3 moons, cities made of crystal, a throne room where Lyria stood beside her father, a king with the same silver eyes. The ship surged forward with new speed. The moon filled their view, and then they were skimming its surface, moving around to the far side where Earth could not be seen. The mining station looked abandoned. Dark structures rose from the lunar surface covered in moon dust. No lights showed in any of the buildings. The ship settled on a flat area near the largest dome. Are you sure this place is safe? Mason asked, as they prepared to exit the ship. The station has been empty for at least 200 of your years, Lyria said. But Elysian technology is made to last. The basic systems should still function. The ship's ramp extended to the lunar surface. Mason hesitated. I don't have a spacesuit, he pointed out. Lyria smiled. You won't need one. The station creates its own atmosphere bubble. It's thin but breathable for both our species. Still cautious, Mason followed Lyria down the ramp. The gravity was light, making each step feel bouncy. The air was indeed thin but breathable and strangely warm. The heating systems still work, Lyria said, noticing his surprise. Good. That means the main power core is active. They approached the large dome. Up close, Mason could see it was made of a crystal-like material similar to Lyria's ship. A doorway appeared as they got near, the material flowing aside to let them enter. Inside, the station slowly came to life. Lights activated as they moved. Through corridors, revealing living spaces, work areas, and what looked like laboratories. Everything was covered in a fine layer of dust, but otherwise untouched by time. My people mined rare elements from your moon, Lyria explained as they explored. This was before your species had developed space travel. We left when the easily accessible deposits were exhausted. They found a control room at the center of the dome. Lyria placed her hands on a crystal panel and more systems activated. Screens appeared in the air showing the area around the station. The Draken ships are still searching the near side of the moon, Lyria said, studying the displays. They haven't detected us yet. How long can we stay here? Mason asked. Not long, a few days at most. I need to contact my people. Lyria worked the controls. The station's communication array is damaged. I can repair it, but I'll need parts from the ship. While Lyria focused on communications, Mason explored more of the station. He found living quarters, with strange but recognizable furniture, food, storage areas with containers of what might have been supplies once now long decayed, and a large room filled with equipment he couldn't begin to understand. When he returned to the control room, Lyria was still working. She looked up as he entered. "I've managed to access the station's database," she said. "There's information here that might help us understand why the crystal responded to you." Mason sat beside her. "What did you find?" "Records of an old research project." Lyria brought up displays showing complex diagrams and text in the flowing script of her language. "My ancestors were studying human DNA. They found similarities to our own, at a fundamental level." "We're related?" Mason found that hard to believe. Not directly, but there are compatible elements. Lyria looked at him. "The researchers theorized that under certain conditions a human could form a bond with an Elysian. They even conducted experiments." "What kind of experiments?" Before Lyria could answer, an alarm sounded. One of the displays flashed red. "They've found us," Lyria said, her voice tense. "A Draken ship is approaching the station." Mason moved to look at the display. A dark angular ship was moving toward their location, very different from the sleek design of Elysian vessels. "What do we do?" he asked. "We fight." Lyria stood and moved to another control panel. "This was a mining station, but it has defensive systems. If I can activate them." Her hands moved across the controls. Nothing happened. "The weapons are offline," she said. "Too long without maintenance," Mason thought quickly. "What about the mining equipment? Could that be used as a weapon?" Lyria looked at him with new respect. "Yes, the excavation lasers. If they still work." They hurried to the equipment room Mason had found earlier. Lyria identified what looked like a large cannon mounted on a movable platform. "An excavation laser," she confirmed. "Used to cut through lunar rock. It's powerful enough to damage a ship. Can you make it work?" "I think so." Lyria began examining the controls. "Help me move it outside. We need a clear shot at their ship." Together they pushed the heavy equipment through the station corridors to an airlock. The platform hovered slightly above the ground, making it possible to move despite its size. Outside, they positioned the laser on a raised area with a good view of the approaching ship. Lyria worked on the controls while Mason kept watch. "It's coming in fast," he warned. The Draken ship was now clearly visible, a dark shape against the starry sky. "Almost ready," Lyria said. The laser hummed as it powered up. There. The Draken ship suddenly fired. A beam of energy hit the dome behind them, sending vibrations through the ground. Another shot struck near their position, throwing up a cloud. "Of moondust, now!" Mason shouted. Lyria activated the laser. A beam of intense light shot from the cannon, striking the Draken ship's side. The ship wobbled but kept coming. "It didn't stop them," Mason said. "One more hit." Lyria adjusted the controls. In the right place. The Draken ship fired again. This time the shot hit just meters from their position. The impact knocked both of them off their feet. Mason felt the thin air whoosh from his lungs as he hit the ground. Lyria recovered first. She crawled back to the laser controls and fired. Again. This time the beam hit the ship's engine section. There was a flash of light and the Draken vessel spun out of control, trailing smoke and debris. It crashed into the lunar surface a kilometer away, sending up a huge plume of dust. "We did it," Mason said, getting to his feet. "One ship," Lyria reminded him. "There are two more, and they'll know what happened to the first." They quickly moved the laser back inside the station. In the control room, Lyria checked the displays. "The other ships are changing course," she said. "They'll be here soon, and they'll be ready for the laser." Mason looked around the control room, thinking, "What else can we use? There must be something in this station that can help us." Lyria was quiet for a moment. Then she looked at the crystal, which still pulsed with light in her hand. "There is one option," she said slowly, "but it's dangerous, for both of us." "What is it?" "The bond between us. It's growing stronger. If we complete it." She hesitated. "The prophecy speaks of transformation, of power. If it's true, and if you truly are the one meant to bond with Elysian royalty, then completing the bond might give us the strength to face the Draken." Mason looked at her. "And if I'm not the one, If this is all just a coincidence, then the attempt could kill us both. Lyria met his eyes. The choice must be yours, Mason Caldwell. I cannot ask this of you. Mason thought about his life on Earth. The quiet cabin, the lonely days fixing old planes, the nightmares from his time in the military. He had been hiding from life, not living it. And now, here he was on the moon, fighting alien hunters alongside a woman who might be an alien princess. It was insane. It was also the most alive he had felt in years. How do we complete this bond? He asked. Lyria's expression softened. We join our minds completely, through the crystal. There would be no secrets between us. All that I am would be open to you, and all that you are, open to me. The idea was both terrifying and strangely appealing. To be known completely by another being. To know them just as fully. All right, Mason said. Let's do it. Lyria led him to a quiet room away from the control center. She sat cross-legged on the floor and motioned for him to sit opposite her. Place your hands on the crystal, she instructed, holding the glowing stone between them. Open your mind to me. Don't fight what you see or feel. Mason placed his hands on the crystal. It was hot now, almost too hot to touch. As soon as contact was made, images flooded his mind. He saw Lyria's world, a beautiful planet with 3 moons and 2 suns. He saw her childhood in crystal palaces, her training in diplomacy and combat. He saw her father, the king, placing the crown of Elysia on her head in a future ceremony, and she saw him, his childhood in Montana, his decision to join the military, the wars he had fought in, the friends he had lost, his retreat to the cabin in the woods, his loneliness. The connection deepened. Mason felt himself changing. Knowledge poured into his mind. Languages, history, science beyond human understanding. His body felt strange, hot and cold at the same time. Lyria gasped. Her eyes fixed on his widened. It's happening, she whispered. The transformation. Mason looked down at his hands. They glowed with the same light as the crystal, and faint patterns like those on Lyria's skin were appearing on his own. His vision changed. Colors became more vivid, and he could see energies flowing through the air. The crystal between them pulsed faster, brighter. Then it shattered. But instead of falling to pieces, the crystal fragments flowed like liquid, forming a network of light that surrounded both of them. The light sank into their skin, binding them together. When it was done, Mason stood up. He felt different, stronger, more aware. He could sense the Draken ships approaching, could feel the energy systems of the station around them. The bond is complete, Lyria said, standing to face him. She looked at him with wonder. You have changed. Mason caught a glimpse of his reflection in a crystal panel. His eyes now had the same silver sheen as Lyria's. The patterns on his skin were subtle but visible. And when he spoke, his voice resonated in a way it never had before. Mason and Lyria stepped onto the lunar surface in their battlesuits. The Draken forces were approaching the station in formation. The commander stood at their center, taller than the others, its metal-like skin gleaming in the starlight. They didn't expect us to come out to meet them, Lyria said through their private communication link. They thought we would hide. Let's use that surprise to our advantage. Mason felt the suit respond to his thoughts. Weapon systems coming online. You take the left flank, I'll take the right. We meet at the commander. Lyria nodded, her silver eyes visible through the clear faceplate of her suit. Be careful. The commander is dangerous. It won't fall easily. They split up, each moving to one side of the advancing Draken force. Mason's suit enhanced his movements, making him faster and stronger than any human could be. The thin lunar gravity added to the effect, allowing him to leap great distances with each step. The Draken spotted them and opened fire. Energy weapons lit up the dark lunar landscape. Mason dodged, his enhanced reflexes making it possible to avoid the deadly beams. He returned fire with his suit's weapons, targeting the nearest hunters. His first shots connected, sending 2 Draken warriors tumbling across the lunar surface. The others adjusted quickly, spreading out to make themselves harder to hit. 3 moved to intercept Mason, their bodies shifting form as they approached, limbs becoming weapons. Mason engaged them directly. The battlesuit amplified his military training, turning his movements into deadly efficiency. He struck the first hunter with enough force to crack its metallic skin. The second fired at close range, hitting Mason's suit, but the advanced armor absorbed the impact. Across the battlefield, Lyria moved like lightning. Her smaller suit was built for speed and precision. She darted between Draken warriors, striking, vital points that Mason somehow knew were their weaknesses. Each hit disabled or destroyed an enemy. The Draken commander watched the battle, assessing. Then it moved, faster than its size suggested was possible. It headed straight for Lyria, ignoring Mason. "Lyria, behind you," Mason called out. She turned just as the commander reached her. Its arm transformed into a blade that cut through the air where Lyria's head had been a moment before. She ducked and rolled away, but the commander was relentless, pressing its attack. Mason fought his way toward them, taking down 2 more hunters in his path. The bond between him and Lyria pulsed with energy, allowing him to sense her movements, to know when she was in danger. The commander cornered Lyria against a large boulder. Its body shifted again, multiple weapons forming from its limbs. Lyria fought bravely, but the commander was too strong, too well armored for her lighter weapons to damage. Mason leaped the remaining distance, using the low gravity to his advantage. He crashed into the commander with all the force his suit could generate. The impact sent them both rolling across the lunar surface. The commander recovered quickly. It stood facing Mason, its featureless face somehow conveying hatred. When it spoke, the sound was like metal grinding on metal, but Mason understood the words, another effect of his transformation. "The prophecy will not come to pass," the commander said. "You will die here, human bondmate." "I'm not just human anymore," Mason replied. The commander attacked. Its speed was incredible, its strength beyond anything Mason had faced. Blows rained down on his suit, each one powerful enough to dent the advanced armor. Mason fought back, landing hits that would have destroyed the lesser hunters, but the commander barely slowed. Lyria joined the fight. Together, they coordinated their attacks, using the bond to move as a single unit. The commander found itself defending from 2 sides, unable to focus its full strength on either opponent. But the commander was cunning. It suddenly shifted tactics, ignoring Mason to launch a devastating attack at Lyria. A projectile shot from its chest, moving too fast to dodge. It hit Lyria's suit, penetrating the armor at the shoulder. She cried out in pain. Mason felt her pain through their bond. Rage filled him, and with it came power. The patterns on his skin glowed brightly, visible even through his suit. Energy coursed through him, into the battle armor, enhancing it beyond its design. He moved with impossible speed, striking the commander with force that cracked its metallic skin. Again and again he hit, driving the larger being backward. The commander tried to counter, but Mason was everywhere at once, his attacks coming from all sides. With a final powerful blow, Mason struck the commander's chest, where the energy core that powered it was housed. His fist punched through the metallic skin, gripping the core. With a twist, he tore it free. The commander froze. Its body began to lose cohesion, the liquid metal-like substance hardening and cracking. Within moments, it collapsed into pieces, no longer a living entity but just dead technology. The remaining Draken hunters retreated to their ships. Without their commander, they had lost the will to fight. The ships lifted off from the lunar surface, accelerating away from Earth's moon. Mason rushed to Lyria's side. The wound in her shoulder was bleeding silver blood, but her suit had already applied medical countermeasures. "You did it," she said, her voice weak but proud. "You defeated a Draken commander. No non-Elysian has ever done that before." "We did. It," Mason corrected her. "I couldn't have fought them without you." They made their way back to the station. Inside, Mason helped Lyria remove her damaged suit and treated her wound with medical supplies they found in the station's supplies. The prophecy. Lyria said as Mason finished bandaging her shoulder. It's coming true. Your transformation, your abilities. This is what was foretold. Mason looked at his hands. The patterns on his skin were permanent now, a visible sign of his change. What happens next? What does the prophecy say? That the bonded pair will return to Elysia, Lyria said. That they will lead our people into a new era of peace and prosperity. That the human bondmate will become more than either species alone. So I go to your world? The idea was both terrifying and exciting. If you choose to, Lyria said, the bond is complete, but your path is still your own to decide. Before Mason could respond, an alert sounded from the control room. They hurried to check the displays. Ships approaching, Lyria said, studying the screen. Then her expression changed to joy. Elysian ships. My people found us. 3 vessels, larger and more impressive than the scout ship they had escaped in, appeared on the display. They moved into orbit around the moon, then sent smaller craft down to the station. How did they find us? Mason asked. The bond. Lyria touched the place on her chest where the crystal had been. When it completed, it sent out a signal stronger than any beacon. They would have detected it across half the galaxy. The station's entry portal opened to admit the new arrivals. A group of Elysians entered, wearing uniforms that marked them as royal guards. They bowed deeply to Lyria, then turned to Mason with expressions of awe. Your Highness, their leader said to Lyria. The king sent us as soon as we detected the bonding signal. He awaits your return with your chosen bondmate. Lyria turned to Mason. This is Admiral Cora, my father's most trusted commander. Admiral Cora bowed to Mason as well. The first human bondmate in our history. The prophecy is fulfilled. More Elysians arrived, setting up equipment, examining the station, and securing the area. Mason found himself the center of much attention, the subject of curious but respectful looks. Your father, Mason said to Lyria when they had a moment alone. The king of your people. What will he think of me? He will welcome you, Lyria assured him. He has always believed in the prophecy, and once he sees the change in you, he will know it is meant to be. Mason looked out a viewport at the Earth hanging in the black sky, his home planet, now looking small and distant. Will I ever come back? Of course, Lyria said. The prophecy speaks of alliance between our worlds. You will be the bridge between humans and Elysians. In time, both will be your people. Admiral, Cora approached them. Your Highnesses, we are ready to depart. The royal flagship awaits in orbit. Mason took a deep breath. All right, I'm ready. They boarded one of the smaller craft that would take them to the flagship. As they lifted off, from the lunar surface, Mason took a last look at Earth. He thought of his simple cabin, his quiet life. It seemed like a dream now, something that had happened to someone else. The small craft docked with the flagship, a massive vessel that dwarfed anything humans had built. Inside, they were greeted with ceremony. Elysian officials bowed to Lyria and to Mason, addressing them both as royalty. Admiral Cora led them to a private chamber filled with luxury beyond anything Mason had ever seen. Crystal fountains flowed with glowing liquid. The walls themselves seemed alive, shifting with patterns of light and color. We will reach Elysia in 3 days, Cora informed them. The king has ordered a royal welcome. The people are eager to see the fulfillment of the prophecy. After the admiral left, Mason stood at a viewport watching Earth grow smaller as the ship accelerated away from the solar system. Having second thoughts? Lyria asked, coming to stand beside him. No, Mason said honestly. Just taking it, all in. A week ago I was fixing old planes and living alone in the woods. Now I'm going to an alien planet as... What? Prince Consort? As king, Lyria corrected. When I take the throne, you will rule beside me as my equal. The bond makes it so.